And I just want to say how eloquent, strong, and admirable they were. Let's give them a round of applause for their courage. Thomas and Marjorie and I will take a few questions from people.
Go ahead. Is basically right now calling on the Senate to make revisions to this bill because he says it doesn't adequately protect the survivors, the victims that are standing behind you. Your response to that?
That's been a red herring all along. The survivors have always been in favor of this legislation, and there's a provision in there you can read if he would just read it that protects them. Now, if he wants to offer more protections in the Senate, that's fine with us, but here's the problem. Now we have to vote on it again in the House. And so, as you heard, justice delayed is justice denied. It could be just another delay tactic. But we want to...
Is that what you think? That's the motivation from the Speaker?
I think the Speaker wants to save face. He's going to vote for a piece of legislation today that he's disparaged for 4 months. And however he needs to come on board, we want him on board. So we appreciate that.
It's a long fight, isn't it? You don't actually need legislation.
Go ahead.
I wonder, what do you say today to Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, the man formerly known as Prince Andrew?
Well, you know, there's becoming a reckoning in Britain that needs to happen in the United States. A prince lost his title. The ambassador to the United States lost his job. We need to see those same kind of consequences here. As my colleague Rose said, there shouldn't be buildings named after these perpetrators of these heinous crimes. There shouldn't be scholarships named after them. And there needs to be accounting. We've seen tens of thousands of pages released by the Oversight Committee. What we've not seen is a single name. So I implore you to look and see if we have true justice and transparency here. And the survivors will know when that has happened.
And I do think that Prince Andrew does need to come and testify at our Oversight Committee, and that can be bipartisan. But I share Thomas's view that the urgency that the British people have shown in getting justice needs to inspire an urgency here in America.
This is a long fight. You don't need legislation. You don't need legislation.
Go ahead.
You don't need legislation to get the files released. President Trump could just release them today.
Well,
is that frustrating for you? Why isn't he doing that? And also, did you ask him to be here today? It's a really powerful moment, this.
Look, I'll let my colleagues speak. I hope the president meets the survivors. And I hope when he signs the bill, the survivors are there. I don't care if I'm there, Thomas Massie is there, Representative Greene's there, but the survivors should be there.
You didn't need it to
but I hope he meets them, because I think if anyone who meets them and sees their emotion will be moved. And my goal is to get justice here. So I hope he will meet them and really hear what's happened and actually take action. But the broader point is, yes, the president could order the Justice Department to release the files, but in a constitutional democracy, what we're supposed to have is Congress says that the files should be released, and then it's not on the whim of any president. Then the Justice Department is compelled to release those files because that's the law of the land.
Let's just take it. Yeah.
Have you spoken to any Republicans in the Senate who are looking to, move this forward?
So Senator Merkley is a Democrat. He's led the exact same legislation that Roe and I introduced in the House. One Republican co-sponsored his bill yesterday, and I have spoken to at least one more who says they will co-sponsor. The important thing about the Senate is that they need not to muck this bill up. There's a lot of attention on here. We've needlessly spent 4 months dragging this out. A duly elected representative, was denied her seat in Congress for 49 days, and it's time to pull the Band-Aid off. The Senate, it may be tempting for them to get cute and to do things that will limit the release of these documents. They are afraid that people will be embarrassed. Well, that's the whole point here. They need to be brought to justice, and embarrassment is no reason to stop it. So the Senate, John Thune, it's up to him. He needs to bring this to the floor of the Senate, and I think the vote today will show that in the House.
And the president has said he would sign the bill. You're going to get almost a unanimous vote here. So you have the president and a unanimous Congress believing that this protects the survivors and is calling for the release. There's no reason for the Senate now to, as Representative Massie puts it, muck around with it. They need to put it up, have a vote, have the president sign it. If there's any further protections, they can do that through the DOJ process. But what they should not do is delay a vote on a bill that the House is going to vote overwhelmingly for and that the president supports.
On the release of these files, Congresswoman Greene, you raised the question of whether or not the Justice Department will actually release these files. Do you take the president at his word when he says he's going to sign this bill, and do you have confidence that these files will actually be released?
I only take people's actions seriously, no longer words.
And what do you think the president's actions?
And I'll tell you, because I wasn't a Johnny-come-lately to the MAGA train. I was day one 2015, and there's a big difference in those Americans and those that decided to support President Trump later on. And I'll tell you right now, this has been one of the most destructive things to MAGA, is watching the man that we supported early on, 3 elections, for people that stood hours, slept in their cars to go to rallies, have fought for truth and transparency and to hold what we consider a corrupt government accountable. Watching this actually turn into a fight has ripped MAGA apart. And the only thing that will speak to the powerful, courageous women behind me is when action is actually taken to release these files, and the American people won't tolerate any other bullshit. That's where we are today. Thank you.
Go ahead. 2 more questions and then we're around all day.
Is this a watershed? How would you sum up today in terms of your battle to get to the truth?
I would say that these survivors have been fighting for decades, and they finally are being heard by the American people, and we're finally going to have a reckoning for this Epstein class that has gotten away with horrific things. Look, I grew up in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. People went to church, they played Little League, they went to their neighbors for barbecue. They didn't go to a rape island and abuse young girls or traffic young girls. And people with extreme wealth have thought that the laws don't apply to them, and their culture is totally out of touch with the values that built America. And finally, we're going to have a reckoning over it.
How worried are you that
We'll take the lady here.
Let me ask you this. You said you wanted this to go straight to the Senate. What message does it send to the survivors behind you if the Senate doesn't act quickly to move this bill forward?
Well, they're not here. They're not going to answer questions, so I'll answer a question. I prefer, actually, it goes straight to the president. He can release these files without the Senate acting. Sometimes they take a long time to get things done. The House figured out a way to take 4 months to get this done. I think it's disrespectful to the survivors if they delay this. There's nothing more important than cleaning out the rot in this country. And this is rot, and it's not a partisan issue. And the senators need to get on this. Yes, the economy is important. Yes, international policy is important, but there's nothing more important than getting to this rot and cleaning it out. They should put it at the top of their agenda.
As you know, there's a provision in the bill already that would allow the DOJ to not release certain information if it would jeopardize an active investigation. And the president just last week ordered his DOJ to conduct an investigation. What makes you think you would actually, if this bill passes, see these files, that the public would see them?
There are 1,000 survivors. They can't open enough investigations to cover up everything that's in these files. And yes, it's true they can try to protect a few certain people or a few certain companies, but those investigations will eventually end. And in the meantime, there's not enough investigations to cover up 1,000 different crimes, 1,000 different rapes, 1,000 different sex trafficking instances. And this is not a moot point, even though they are doing that.
And once this bill is signed into law, any career official at the DOJ or the FBI who does not comply with the law is at legal risk. It's no longer just up to the president.
Look, we could have passed a simple resolution here in the House, and that would have been the end of it. Instead, we chose a very hard path, which is to get legislation, a law passed, which means it has to go through the House, the Senate, and be presented to the president. And that will have the force of law. They will be breaking the law if they do not release these files.
Thank you very much.
The president has fought so hard.
Last
to
question,
block
and
the
then-
release of these files. Why do you think he has fought so hard? If he could do it now, why hasn't he done it now?
I believe he's trying to protect friends and donors. And by the way, these aren't necessarily Republicans. Once you get to $1 billion, you transcend parties. You just assume you can pay off whatever party is in charge of the White House, whatever party is in charge of the House of Representatives. And this is about those kinds of people. I think he's been trying to protect them. And I think it also incriminates our own government. This is a complete and total failure of the justice system, as the survivors have witnessed here today to us. It incriminates the FBI. It incriminates our intelligence agencies. It incriminates police departments in West Palm Beach. And that's what has been protected by this, either willfully or unknowingly, and it's time to end it.
And I would agree with Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene that what matters now is just the action. I don't speculate on what politicians' motives are or what's in their heart. The point is the American people have spoken, Congress has spoken, release the files. It's time for justice. Thank you very much.